Yeah? And your body has transformed this into whatever you are. So when people say you are what you eat, it is absolutely true. Because you have taken this and transformed it. Your mind is the same. That when you have your mind, you basically take everything that you see, everything that you experience, and you put it into your mind. So your mind is an accumulation of your thoughts, your experiences, and everything that it takes in. So if you spend your time sitting in front of the TV watching Hindi serials or Bollywood movies, that is the accumulation of your mind. And what it does for you is that it basically starts to shape the way you view the world. So today in London we see so many stabbings and robberies and whatever. And if you've lived here for a long time, you're going to say it's become such a dangerous place. I mean, when you think about the numbers, there might be 10 stabbings and there are 10 million people. So it's insignificant, but you've never seen it. So now the media keeps telling you every day somebody's got stabbed, somebody's got hurt, so it becomes dangerous. If you imagine the same situation for a Syrian refugee who's come here, you will look at this and say there's only 10 stabbings. It's such a safe place. Where I came from, everybody was getting stabbed. So the view that you have of the world is entirely built around what you have put in your mind. The reason is that outside of your mind, the only way that you experience anything in here is through the 5 senses that you have. Touch, smell, taste, sight, hearing. Outside of this you cannot see. So just imagine what happens at night when you go to sleep. Your senses all shut off. You're still alive, the world is still alive, your mind is still alive, but because your senses are shut off, you have no experience. So everything closes. And what happens, therefore, is that what you are seeing, what you are hearing, what you're doing is so limited by this that it becomes a way that you kind of reflect on everything. So your whole view of what you see is now limited by this. What happens if you're able to go beyond this? That is the key question, because this limiting factor is now got you into this. So the problem with this scenario is a simple one, and that is that when you're born, there are 2 things that come into your body, that you have, your body and whatever comes inside it. And when you think about what happens when somebody dies, talking, eating, sleeping, all doesn't happen. So all of these things cannot be things that the body does. They must be things that the body is doing on behalf of whatever is in the body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if that is the case, when you think about this body, what does this body need? You think about food, you think about clothes, you think about possessions, and this is how we identify ourselves. Mine is a Mercedes, my kids go to this school, this house is mine. So suddenly all of this becomes our identity. Yet somebody on the spiritual path, like Pujya Samniji, these things are meaningless. Clothes, food, possessions are basically non-existent in this path. Yet for us, they become the purpose of our life. In fact, they become our identity, our definition. How many people do you see who actually, even on their business cards, will put CA or something? This is their identity. So, when you look at this scenario, what is the issue with this? The issue with this is that we are living a life that is largely external. It is largely driven by this view that we have. So today, when you come out, if you're parked down the road and the street lights aren't working, and you've just read that London is now such a dangerous place, everybody carries a knife, you will start walking with a sense of fear. So you've already decided that there is a problem before there is a problem, because you have taken that and put it into your mind, right? So in this scenario, what happens is that the whole process of going through life becomes a sense of drama, one after the other, a sense of up and down, a sense of happiness and sadness, fear and anxiety. And when you think about what religion ends up being, we talk about equanimity, samtabhav, calmness. And these things are totally opposite. So what it tells us, or should tell us, is that the life that we are leading is a very external driven life. It's a life in which we have essentially our relationships, my children and my mother and my father and whatever, my possessions, my car, my job, and this becomes the life. And yet we know, if we think about this logically, we know that at the point we come to the end of the life, all of this is going to be behind. Yet we spend this life entirely in this. Okay? So, what we need to then think about is, how do you get past this? So today, if I drop a pin, all of you will hear the noise of the pin. Yet, if you think about what goes on inside your bodies, you have blood flowing, you have all this, your stomach digesting, all these things happening, you're totally unaware of these things. And the question is about awareness. How do you change your awareness? How do you change the way that you actually see the world? When we talk about worldview actually means the perception you have, the way that you think about how everything is taken. So today, let me give you an example. If I meet Hasubai today, and I've heard so much about him, I will stop and say, "Oh, Hasubai, so nice to meet you. It's really glad that you're here," whatever. It's a perception. So everything that you do, one thing that I noticed, I was doing Paryushan at Nona with Pujya Samniji there. One of the things I said to people is that, at the end we go and say Michami Dukuram to everybody. But we go and say that to everybody we know. And everybody we're happy with. And everybody there's no chance that there's any problem at all. But the ones that you see that there is a little bit of a problem with, you kind of slightly avoid, And this is the whole thing that your mind does for you. So you have to start thinking about this inner dimension. So let's start thinking about what the inner dimension is. Today, you're composed of two things, this body and this soul. You might say, how do I know? I've never experienced it. And the answer is a simple one, that in life there are only three possibilities. There is God, there is luck, and there is the soul. If there is God, then everything that you have, the fact that you're here rather than being in a Syrian refugee camp, is given to you by God. So why is he discriminating? If it's luck and it's random, well, there's nothing in this life that is luck. Everything, this world is so ordered. And if it is your soul, it means you're here because of what you have done previously. If that is the case, then this life is nothing but a reflection. Think about this, right? It's very important. It's nothing but a reflection of everything that you have done before. So everything you do is a bit like a mirror. It sticks on this mirror, and then one day you see the opposite. You're nice to people, people will be nice to you. You hit somebody, somebody will come and hit you. And if you read the books, the scriptures, the stories, you see this so often, where that things happen to people because in one life they've done something, and in the following life, for example, Bhagwan Mahavir and the lives of that happened with his ears and so on. All these stories are to give you an example of cause and effect. Forget whether they're true or mythology, forget all of that, but it's cause and effect. It's saying that you do this, the exact opposite is going to happen. How do you know that's true? That comes down to this word, faith. So, if you're a Christian, faith is, I believe in Jesus Christ. If you're a Muslim, I believe in Allah. In Jainism, faith means I believe in my soul. The darshan of your soul. That is faith. Now, in every religion, it's the key part. If I don't believe in Jesus Christ, I'm an atheist if I'm supposed to be Christian. So this belief in somebody or something that is largely out of your physical sense, you can't see it, you can't hear it, is what faith actually ends up being, because you're trying to perceive something that is not physical. When you talk about God, when you talk about spirit, when you talk about energy, all of these things are not physical. To believe in them is faith. So, what happens when you do believe in them? When you believe in them, your life becomes entirely different. Because what you are now doing is thinking about not the well-being of your physical body, and that's what we do today, entirely. When we think of diet, exercise, clothes, we're thinking about the well-being of this body. What we end up thinking about is the well-being of something that is intangible inside us, the soul. And if we start thinking about that, then the question is, if what I did in my last life brought me here, what should I do in my next life to take me there? So, the question then comes, can you believe that there is a next life? And can you believe that what you do in this life becomes part of the next life? Can you believe that what you did in the last life is this life? And this question is this whole question about faith. That you must have faith in this. So, when we think about this whole idea of faith, there is the first two words of this book that most of you may have heard of, Tattva Sutra, start with the word Samyak Darshan. And this is essentially the start of this idea of faith. So, if today I'm fortunate enough to experience who I am, fortunate enough to experience my soul, what that would do to me is essentially change what I see and what I believe, because I now see myself as this soul in a body, rather than this body that may have some energy or life in it. If I see myself as a soul, what do you think is going to happen? My thoughts start to think about the whole question of my well-being from a perspective of the soul. In many ways, that's what Sanghrajka does, because her focus is largely inside. There is no focus on worldly matters, worldly relationships, prestige, status, accumulation, possessions. And when we think about people who are more elevated than us, sadhus and acharyas and everybody else, you see that their behavior, their dress sense, their actions, their day-to-day life is extremely different. But most of you are happy coming here on a Friday. How many of you would be happy taking Diksha like Sanghrajka? You must be here because you believe there's some value. There must be some positive things you're getting. But if that's the case, why aren't you following the same life?
Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one life. The difference, the difference is that we might be going towards this religious path one step at a time. But Sanghrajka is in the fast lane, because her life is devoted to this, whereas this becomes one Friday evening of our life. It's not 24 hours every day of the week. But what is the difference? The difference is this idea of experiencing your soul. That is what darshan is. When you go to a derasa and you see Mahavir Bhagwan, you're either looking at this and saying, this is a marble piece of stone nicely carved, Or you might think this is God, and if I pray down, He'll do nice things for me, but it's not possible. Or you might see a reflection of your soul. That this is what perfection of my soul can look like. The reason it is so important, when you read even this, where it says, see yourself through yourself, the reason it's so important is when you think about yourself, what is yourself? The idea of self, if it is limited to who you think you are, if I am Mehool and that is my identity, then that is an identity that will last for 70, 80 years, and that's it. End of identity. The minute you start thinking about life beyond this life and coming from before this life, that starts to build this idea of faith. So, what faith ends up being is one of two things. It either ends up being this idea that you have experienced the soul inside of you, and as you experience this soul, what happens is that your attitude, your life, your body, everything changes. Or it ends up being something else, that you start to develop such a deep faith in what is your soul, in your karma, that faith in itself changes your behavior. It starts getting you away from what is worldly and externally and takes you inwardly. And so when we start thinking about what we do in terms of religious activities, even in terms of rituals, in terms of tyag, in terms of all of these things are to restrain the body and focus our mind into the soul, so that over a period of time, if you're a Hindu and you go into a temple, into a mandir, and you have Krishna Bhagwan there, as a Hindu you believe that is God, and God has grace, and by His grace He can do things for you. So all you have to do is please Him, and in return He will grant you things. When you go into a derasar and you have Mahavir Bhagwan, Mahavir Bhagwan isn't even in this universe anymore. He's liberated, he's gone. So that in itself is a consecrated piece of stone. It's an idol. And that idol in reality cannot do anything for you. Okay? So if it can't do anything for you, then the only thing that can do anything for you is yourself. So coming back to this idea of karma and soul becomes what in Jainism we call tattva, absolute realities. These things that aren't subject to anything else. So the idea that you have a soul, the idea that things come into that soul, your karma, the idea that you experience that karma, which gives you this life and other lives and whatever, and by getting rid of this karma, you become free, is faith in Jainism. Once that faith sits inside you, then your fear stops being walking down that street because you've read about stabbings. Your fear becomes your karma. Think about this. If you believe in this, and it's a huge step, and I'll show you how big the step is. This is what belief looks like, and this is what the rest of us look like. Because once you have that belief, this is a natural step to take Diksha. So if you have this belief, just think about this, that if you are going down that dark road, why will you be assaulted or injured? Why? Because you have bound that karma previously. If you have bound that karma, can you stop that happening?
No.
No. If you don't have that karma, will it ever happen to you?
No.
So then what are you worried about? But yet we will go down in fear. Yes? And yet that fear is only in our minds. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So if it's only in our minds, we're living in this world. You might have heard of the word Maya, delusion. So we're living in this world that we have created by our own thoughts and seeing and reading, whatever. So when you come to this idea of faith, faith basically means that you have that belief that you don't have the fear. Because if it's there and it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not there and it's not going to happen, even if you have all the fear, it's not going to happen. So the question then comes about, what is this karma that you're binding? Sorry, but you have a question. Good.
Yeah. No, I was thinking like the example you gave that the kind of fear we have. But is it not that we can change the location from dangerous place to safer place? Then that risk will be down, so fear will be down.
You see, what is safer and what is more dangerous is the question.
That's right.
Because, as I was saying at the beginning, to us, London now seems like it's more dangerous. And if you just come from Syria as a refugee, it's the safest place there is. I was, a few weeks ago, I was in Rome. And because I hadn't read any of the newspapers, I had no idea whether Rome was dangerous or not dangerous. But every day we walked everywhere. You know, and we were tourists. We had no idea that this was the safe part and not. In fact, in 1 week we walked 100,000 steps. But when I sit and logically look at it, perhaps we should have checked to see what was the safe part of town and what. But you don't know. So you assume everything is safe, everything is okay. So this idea of what is safe and what isn't is largely created by us. When you look at any scenario, if you start imagining the worst things that could happen to any scenario, you will always think, you know, so I give you another logical answer. If, you know, when I was growing up, my parents always used to say to me that, you know, you must be careful of strangers. You must be careful, you know, about talking to them. You must be careful about, you know, getting into cars or whatever. Yet today we have Uber, and we will call a car and get in. We have no idea who's driving it. We have no idea how safe they are, whether they've been trained. Because our fear, and this is what they rely on, our fear of having the right amount of money, talking to somebody, giving them a tip, all of these things is greater than just getting in from a telephone, having the money billed to our credit card and just coming out. It's built on fear.
So I was thinking like how it reflects on this theory that from in dangerous place, the risk is higher. So it means I have done karma is there, yeah, but because I'm at dangerous place, so risk is anyway higher. So can I interpret in this way that because I'm in that place, it means I've done more bad karma. That's why I'm there.
Well, so the karma that you have determines a lot of things about you. Your body, your state, your birth, all of these things that you've inherited, you've got without choice. You have no choice the family you're born into. But the family you're born into is critical in terms of your upbringing and your character and how much you learn as a child. You have no idea about, so for example, you know, we talk about body, but if you're born into a good family and you eat well, you're likely to have a healthier body than if you don't. So all these things that you get are largely because of the karma that you have. A lot of the experiences that you get are largely because of the karma that you have. So the question then becomes, what is your free will? It's a very important question. Because if you don't have free will, does that mean everything is destined and everything is fated and whatever you do, it doesn't matter? The free will that you have is a very important thing to understand. So there are three ways in which you, when I say you, I mean your soul, your Atma. There are three ways in which it can act. So every time you think something, every time you say something, and every time you do something, that is free will. So that free will, many people would look at this in a way that they say, well, you know, if I'm just thinking about something that's not good, surely that can't be as bad as going and doing something. But free will doesn't work like that. Free will is that it is equal. So today, you don't have to come and think, you don't have to come and hit me, you just have to sit there and think about hitting me, and it's the same effect. Why is it the same effect? Because for you to come and hit me, I would have to have that karma, logically. So it's not even possible. If you even think about aeroplane crashes, you get a crash of an aeroplane. Some people survive and some people don't survive. They cannot find, if you look, they have done so many studies to figure out where you should sit on an aeroplane to survive. They cannot find it. It's random. But the idea of what happens to you is largely determined by what karma you have. The karma you have is largely determined by your free will. So you have bound the karma that basically you are now experiencing. If you are experiencing that karma, and in that experience, what you do is bind more karma, that experience goes on and on and on. Why do the same things happen to the same people? If you experience anger today, you're getting angry. There's a difference between feeling anger and getting angry. Feeling anger is your karma. Getting angry is your free will. Because you decided to put effort into this.
Yeah, and can I
Yes.
speak? So, like, having the feeling of anger, that is kind of pradeshodai, because you binded that type of karma, and it is your free will. Okay, if my wife is talking in a high tone, and I should control, and I should speak in a low tone, and then it is your free will or your reasoning mind that is purifying the state of your anger and giving you a chance not to boil that higher degree, other it would be dangerous. So through your past experience or through your spiritual journey, you made that pradeshodai only, not vipakodai. Two very important terms in the field of karma. Vipakodai means we have given them opportunity, we have given our anger an opportunity to express fully and blow so many relations and making you a bad person. And there another opportunity, you have anger inside you, but your reasoning mind or your spiritual practice make you aware, Sunil, this is a danger. Don't speak so loudly. Don't speak so openly. And save your Atma, save yourself, or save your personality. It means just Pradeshodai, within your soul anger is there, but you reduce the degree of boiling. So that is no vipakodai or less degree of vipakodai, and the karma is burnt out through your pradeshodai only, within yourself. So this is the difference with the great men and those who have their spiritual practice. So they never ever give a chance to come in the full fruition. Might be inside there is little ignited, they are little warm, or there is little wave of anger, but that is only within Pradeshodaya. So several times Acharya Mahapragya used to say like, अपने क्रोध को सफल मत करो, क्रोध को बाहर आने का अवसर मत दो, यदि भीतर है तो आत्म प्रदेशों में भोग कर उसको खत्म करो. So that comes through the practice of meditation, that comes through the swadhyaya, that comes listening to various lectures, and that comes to reading various swadhyaya stories and things.
So just following on from what Pujya Swamiji said, I think given the time, let's just think a little bit about this whole idea of what happens to you. Because I think there's a, getting people to believe this is a big step. But if you accept it logically, at that point, in your mind, it will settle. Okay? So, if today you have, if in a previous life, or yesterday, or whenever, you have expressed anger, and as a result, you have bound the karma that will give you the reaction of that. Okay? How does it give you reaction? How does karma give this body reaction? Because it has to give you something. And the only mechanism that it has is that you have this feeling of anger. I mean, when you see people, you can see that they're angry just by looking at their face or looking at their eyes. Or sometimes you say, look, I'm really anxious, type, leave me alone. So it gives you this feeling of anger. This feeling that you're experiencing is a reflection of what you have done before. Now that you have this feeling, it needs energy, it needs effort, it needs some action. Where does that come from? If you have a person who's passed away, is there any action there? Is there any energy there? So that is coming from what has left that body when they pass, which is their soul. So if your soul gives it that energy, gives that anger that energy, what is the result? The result becomes that you become angry. From having anger, you become angry. As you become angry, whether it's in your thought of, how dare they say this? How dare, do you know who I am? Do they know how they look? All these thoughts that come is anger. That anger is going to bind that karma. What is the effect of that karma? Anger. So you say about people, this person is an angry person. The reason is they keep binding and unbinding. Or you say this person is a kind person because they have this trait, because they keep doing the same things. So as you do these things, either in your thoughts, or in your words, or in your deeds, you bind that karma. As you bind that karma basically becomes, if you think about a glass of water, a pure glass of water, and you put some Ribena into it, that Ribena is enough to color that water completely. This is what karma does to you, it colors you. Now, when you drink that water, does it taste of water or Ribena?
Ribena.
But it's water, 99% or 90% water. But having that color actually changes its attributes, what it's able to do. This is the state we're in. Okay? As soon as we realize that this is us, through even a small amount of faith, we start to believe that what happens to us is a result of our actions, not somebody else, us. So there was an interesting question I was asked, that is it our fault that President Trump is the President of America? Interesting question. The answer is it must be. Why? Because why else would we be born in this place in this time if it wasn't our karma? So, at the point where you stop looking outside, is the point where you start understanding that by your thoughts, you will actually shape your future. By your actions, you will shape your future. By your words. When people talk about, being able to imagine your destiny, that's what this is. That if you are able to shape, have your thoughts always positive, no matter what happens, be positive, then that actually starts to get you to a point where everything will start to be positive, because that's the kind of person you are and that's the kind of thing that happens. So, when you look at that scenario, then you have to start thinking about what it means once you have Darshan. When you start religion, what does it mean? And I'm going to use Pujya Samniji as an example again, but this idea of taking Diksha, I mean, we talk about vows and everything else, but there is one thing that is critical about Diksha, that when we do Pratikrama, we do Samaik, Vegharini Samaik. Samniji does a lifetime Samaik. That's the biggest difference. that when they take Diksha, they take a vow of Samayik for life, which means they now are in equanimity. If you're in equanimity, you stop reacting. You never let that anger make you angry, so the reactions to everything stops. Guess what happens if you don't react? The anger disappears. Just try it. Next time something happens, take a deep breath. I always tell you that. Take a deep breath. And watch, it'll disappear. If you're in equanimity, everything disappears. The second thing is this idea of tyag, of restraint. That if you're able to restrain this mind and control it in everything that you do, what happens to that is that essentially your ability to go out and cause karma actually starts to reduce. And then the third thing is when you look at things like possessions, things like accumulation, by not actually focusing your life on those, what your focus then starts to do is come inside. If you've just bought a new car, just imagine what happens. You park it outside and you're wondering, have I parked it properly? Is somebody going to scrape it? You stay a little bit further away. So all this tension is because you have some value that you have, attachment that you've placed into this possession. The idea is to get rid of that attachment. I mean, if you look at Samniti's life, where is the attachment? There is no possession to be attached to, there's no family to be attached to, and the whole life is about being balanced. So the last thing I'll say, and then we'll take questions, is that what is the effect of not doing this? Because I think you have to understand the effect of this, that every time you're binding karma, what you're largely doing in binding karma is harming another life. If I sit here and think badly of you, whatever happens to you doesn't matter, but in my mind I'm causing you harm, which is enough. So, by your thoughts, your words, and your deeds, every time you cause harm in any way, that becomes what you will suffer. If I sit here and think badly of you, you might not even realize that I'm thinking badly of you. And it may not even affect you because your mind is somewhere else. It's affecting me. So your actions, the only person who is ever going to suffer those actions is you. Whatever you do. Whatever you do. Because the only actions that anybody else will suffer is largely because of their karma. So when that happens, just think about this, my last thought for you. On that basis, it means that you cannot really do anything for anybody, and nobody can do anything to you. If you have kids, multiple kids, you love them equally, put them in the same schools, give them the same opportunities, why do they grow up so differently? You've done everything the same. You've done the same schools, the same sports clubs, yet one can play cricket and one can't. One is bright in history and one is... So, you can give them opportunities, but unless it's within them, nothing is going to happen. And so, this is the critical thing to remember about Darshan. The thing that you have to do is stop looking at your life from an outside perspective, from an accumulation perspective, and start to think about what it is from an internal perspective. And on that basis, start to think about how you change your thoughts. And it's largely thoughts, because generally we're cowards. We won't do anything. We sit and think about all these things, but we won't ever do anything. But how do you change those thoughts enough so that your future changes? Because you're not going to affect anybody else by it. So, I can stop there, but we have time, so please ask some questions.